Meredith, I'm the county CFO.
So, Nate Andrew, partner with RSM.
Mark Schwartz, county audit committee member.
I
don't even know.
Shirley Brothel, assistant county auditor.
Susan Cunningham, county board member.
Maureen Coffey, county board member and audit committee co-chairs.
Wayne Scott, county auditor.
Luann Lohr, community member.
John Weisstadt, community member. How about back here?
Richard Chabot, I'm the CISO for the county.
Slavin, I'm chief operating officer for Department 10.
And Holly Hertel, CIR. Very good. Well, I think we first have minutes to approve.
Maria.
Have any concerns
I
about?
provided my comments earlier to Wayne.
No fun.
Nothing to say today.
Wow. Let's, no, I think that for the close review. Anyone else? All right. Motion to adopt them.
I so move.
I'm going to abstain just because I failed to read them.
Thank you for your honesty.
I will,
You've had years of service that will count towards your score, and you're doing great.
We have a second.
I'll second Mark's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? One abstention. All right, so we're going to have the knowledge enhancement. Sounds like something from the Matrix or Severance, but I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Well,
Training us up.
I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here and chat with you all today. As I mentioned, Nate Andrew, I'm a partner with RSM. I lead the overall relationship for our firm with the county and specifically the engagement that we have with the internal audit department. Really the purpose of today, we were invited in to share some perspectives, certainly about the audit committee responsibilities, which I'll try to move through that relatively quickly, but more so focus on some of the things that we're seeing some of the more high-performing audit committees do and some recent developments as it relates to audit committee guidance. So with that, we can jump to the first slide. I promise I won't spend much time on this because I think you probably all know a good bit about the overall purpose of the audit committee. Really, the committee's role for the county is to provide advice and insights as it relates to risk management. That includes financial risk, reputational risk, operational risk, and the main mechanism by which the audit committee dispels that duty and purpose, certainly through tight coordination with the county auditor, but also the internal audit department that falls under, obviously reports to the county manager, but falls under Department of Management and Finance, and then as well as obviously providing oversight to the external auditors. From a composition perspective, I'm not going to go through the whole wheel. We can see who's here, but I'll say from a best practice perspective, especially for government entities like Arlington County, having diversity in the board is something that is critically important. And you think about the purpose of the audit committee, it is to provide strategic level insight, feedback, and bring experience that is diverse and can help the county tackle a diverse array of risks. Can move to the next slide. The audit committee charter is essentially it's maybe not quite as lofty as the Bible, but it's certainly a touchstone document for the audit committee. If we think about the purpose, the charter is really I'll call it the train tracks and guardrails for how the audit committee goes about actually dispelling its duties. I know that I think just in the last audit committee meeting, the updated charter was approved. So there have been amendments, which is great. That means you're dispelling one of the critical duties of the audit committee and revisiting and adjusting as time goes on. There may be need to update and reflect the current environment that you're operating in. The key elements, and it's actually a pretty relatively short and sweet document, I would say, which is always nice. Simple is good, but key elements certainly establishes the formation of the committee, the various roles and the structure of the audit committee. Obviously, we just talked about the fact that it dictates how often you all should be looking at it and updating it, but also gives insights and guidance as to how to interact with various stakeholders within the county. Jump to the next slide. We tried to summarize the overall duties and responsibilities of the audit committee into the 5 buckets that you see here. I'd say, and here again, we have many experienced members, but one of the greatest tasks of the audit committee is through that coordination with the Office of the County Auditor is to provide oversight and feedback on the annual audit plan for the Office of the County Auditor, reviewing the reports, which I know that there are few to review today, and really coming with, it's more than just the mechanics of reviewing a report. It's coming with, if you think about that slide that had the 8 committee members that were of diverse sources, coming with a questioning mindset, coming with questions that will deepen the impact of those audit reports on the county, and ultimately leave the county in a better place. Some of the other responsibilities here, support and evaluation of the Office of County Auditor, so in impact or input on budget and performance of the county auditor. Audit coordination, so coordinating with the external auditor as well as the internal audit department that falls under the county manager through DMF. From a governance and compliance perspective, so one of this committee's roles is to really escalate major concerns to the board. So as part of reviewing the audit reports, both from the county auditor, from internal audit, and from the external auditor, looking at those things with a critical eye and escalating any concerns to the board for potentially greater action. The item at the bottom, perhaps it's poorly placed, because one of the most important functions that a high functioning audit committee serves is providing the county auditor or an internal audit function an independent reporting line. Internal audit shops, it is critical that they have the ability to step outside of management, escalate concerns, provide truly independent and objective feedback. And the audit committee serves that role for the Office of the County Auditor through the reporting structure. Next slide. Just a brief overview of the audit functions. Perhaps this is old hat for many of you, but just a reminder, there are 3 main audit functions that the audit committee interacts with, and at least one of the functions reports to the audit committee, that being the Office of the County Auditor. So we'll kind of go through the various stacks here and compare and contrast a bit. So obviously we have the Office of the County Auditor. The focus of the Office of the County Auditor is really on performance and operational audits, relatively broad programmatic reviews. This is, I would say, of the audit functions, obviously it's the only one that reports to the audit committee, completely independent and objective body as compared to the internal audit function that reports up to the county manager, although there's still a good bit of independence and objectivity established there. The committee's role as it relates to the OCA, I think everybody knows, is to review the annual audit plan, review internal audit reports that have been provided, and again, support the independence of that function. There's then the internal audit function that reports up to the county manager, which is the department that RSM partners closely with. The focus is slightly different from the Office of the County Auditor for the internal audit department that resides within DMF. Really, the focus is on reviews of policies and procedures, internal controls, financial and compliance concerns, as well as addressing fraud, waste, and abuse. The audit committee's role as it relates to interacting with that function is really reviewing reports and on an ongoing basis, receiving updates from that function. And then finally, perhaps the simplest of the relationships, the external auditor, they're performing the financial audit for the county. That's provided on an annual basis. And as part of that, they have the opportunity to raise any concerns that they've identified throughout the year. I'm going to spend very little time on this. You probably all know that you're meeting on a quarterly basis. We all know that the contents of the meeting are foilable. The one thing that I'll maybe highlight here, the very last bullet, engagement with county staff, and there are obviously provisions for this in the audit committee's charter. I would encourage you, and we're going to talk about preparing for meetings in a moment and share some perspectives on what higher functioning audit committees do. Would definitely encourage you, as you're doing pre-reads of materials, if there are, and as we have today, members of the county management, where by having their presence in a meeting would perhaps deepen the conversation, allow you to get to cut to the heart of an issue through detailed discussion. I know Wayne probably makes decisions on, hey, I think we need to bring people in, but you also have the ability to reach out to Wayne and let him know, hey, we think we'd like to speak to the auditee for this particular report. Jumping to the next slide. So some tips on preparing for meetings. Reading minutes, some of the basic blocking and tackling, certainly important. I would highly recommend, and I'm sure you all do your due diligence, but really diving into and studying the reports that are going to be reviewed as part of the audit committee meeting. Critically important to not step into the meeting having reviewed the report for the first time 30 minutes beforehand. Part of being a high-performing audit committee member, again, you're here for a reason. It's to ensure that you're bringing your experience and really giving deep thought to the topics that are going to be discussed, and come prepared to bring those insightful questions, again, with the purpose of cutting to the heart of issues and hopefully making actionable decisions or recommending actions based on the reports. Coordination with the county auditor. I just touched on the previous slide about certainly reaching out and asking for members of management to join, but to the extent that a pre-read or pre-meeting is necessary for particularly complex reports or reports that may be viewed as potentially controversial or drawing major public attention, having a pre-meeting so that the actual meeting is more productive, and again, you can quickly get to some of the decision points. One of the things that we see our high-performing audit committees do. The last couple of things, staying current on industry trends, that is another just absolutely critical function that the audit committee performs and members should be performing. I know I continue to anchor back to that diagram that showed the 8 members, but part of the reason why you have so many people and such a diverse array of people on the audit committee is you are all bringing perspectives and hopefully strategic level perspectives and staying current on what are some of the issues that are affecting other counties? What are some of the things that have hit the news lately within the county? Understanding outside of state and local government, what are some of the trends that are even impacting commercial entities, and bringing again that questioning and strategic level mindset to the meetings. Yeah, the next to last main bullet there, reflecting on committee responsibilities. We're going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide, but really spending time in advance of a meeting, reflecting on what we all as committee members signed up for, and ensuring that you're providing that level of due care. Jump to the next slide. Oh. This is where we jump to the printed version. Thank you so much for printing. There's a nice image up here. So maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. The Institute of Internal Auditors is the professional organization that really provides guidance for internal audit functions.
We're all been invited to their holiday party. We know all about it.
Okay. Did you go?
Oh,
No.
No.
I was told it was next week.
He was not actually invited.
But the IAA is really the standard setting body for internal audit functions. But they don't just comment on internal audit functions. They also have great perspectives on overall organizational governance. And they released updated guidance in January of 2024, went into effect this past year. As part of that newly released guidance, they provide a perspective on high-performing audit committees and really broke it down into 3 pillars. The first pillar, relatively self-explanatory, compliance with the charter. Again, using that charter document as the touchstone for, are we continuing to meet and dispel the duties that are outlined within that charter. Pillar 2 is participation of audit committee members. This is not just showing up and being physically present to a meeting. And I encourage all of you to go out and take a look at the updated IA standards. They are publicly available, but ultimately coming and demonstrating an understanding of the key issues at hand. A lot of that goes back to some of the tips on the previous slide around preparing for the meetings. But really reflecting on and ensuring that as an audit committee member, we're all collectively thinking critically about the issues that are brought forth and providing recommendations to management. And then the third pillar here, value-added activities pursued and outcomes achieved. The way that I'd characterize this is, as audit committee members, your goal should be to help the county facilitate decision-making around risk management. And providing that, again, I keep referring back to strategic level insight. I'd say my big takeaway here is, if you haven't, I would again encourage you to take a look at some of the IAA's guidance around this. It provides within some of the exhibits, they have some questions that you can be asking yourself around effectiveness of as a committee member. We're almost there. So the committee's role in risk management and governance, many of you are probably familiar with the 3 lines model. This was primarily coined by and certainly championed by the IIA. So when you think about an organization from a risk management perspective, you can generally break it down into 3 lines. There's the first line. So these are the service providers. So for the county, it would be things like procurement, public works, water, permitting, the line of the organization that is actually interacting with the customers or constituents. The second line, which performs support roles, so maybe legal or security in the case of the county. And then the third line, which are really the risk assurers, provide that independent and objective view. This would be internal audit and the Office of the County Auditor. But what the IIA did with the updated guidance is they've incorporated the overall governing body to that model. So as audit committee members, your job is not to run the front line. Your job is not to run the second or third line, but to provide that higher level guidance and oversight on the activities, and to really leverage the outputs from Office of the County Auditor, internal audit, and external audit to make well-informed decisions and drive your questions. Maybe to get slightly more tactical, just a little bit of an overview of the audit process, and I'll talk a little bit about how the audit committee should be involved in that process. Starting at the top, risk assessment for development of the proposed audit plan. Your role in that is reviewing, again, bringing that critical eye. I was in an audit committee meeting for one of my other clients earlier this week, and the audit committee members just asked really insightful questions about the items that were on the plan. Things like, what are the 3 things we're trying to accomplish with this? They asked questions about juxtaposing the audit plan against sources of revenue. So this is a commercial entity, but how did the audit plan address the 3 areas or the 3 business units, and how did the split of those audits compare to the relative size of revenue driven by each of those 3 business units? So just acting as a check and balance on, are we looking at the right things, and are we concentrating on the right areas? This is also where you'd bring into play your understanding of risk as a whole. Or emerging trends. What are the things that you're hearing and seeing? Perhaps some of you serve on other committees. What are the things that other committees are asking about and other audit functions are focused on? So providing that approval, moving around the circle, the audit is then executed by the Office of the County Auditor, internal audit, or external auditor. Moving around, the internal audit or external audit would be performing the next step. But then the final report is presented to the Arlington County Audit Committee. I'm not going to belabor some of the points that I made earlier just around responsibilities there. Those results then ultimately get communicated up to the county board. And then typically there is ongoing follow-up. And I know that there's a good cadence for reporting on follow-up of action items. That brings us to the end. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully it was concise. Hopefully you can at the very least use the document that we prepared and shared as another guardrail or guidepost. But I'm happy to entertain any questions or feedback.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. So I gathered from something you said at the beginning of your presentation, and then throughout it, you've probably looked at a fair number of audit committees in your day. When you consider audit committees of other governmental entities, I mean, especially at the county or city level, do you have any overarching observations as to how they function compared to us, and if there are any more granular best practices or ideas that we might want to consider? And before you answer that question,
He has another.
my colleagues are aware of this, but just across the way, so to speak, we have a public school system that receives roughly 45% of the county budget. And they have an audit committee, to their credit. However, much to our credit and their discredit, being blunt about it, their audit committee is heavily insular. It's only, the only members of the audit committee are the school board members, staff. There's no public members of the audit committee. To my knowledge, there is no mandate or protocol for them to have public meetings, to solicit public comment, or to provide public reports. Everything is internal. And, and I've had conversations with actually all 5 school board members, including the newest one, about it. And, they all kind of nod their heads and say, yeah, we think you're doing a great job over there, county, but You know, nobody wants to honestly take the bull by the horns and really look at how they're doing and what value their audit committee brings. And it brings some, certainly, as it is now. Anyway, I'd love your thoughts about that and anything more broadly.
Yeah. Let me see how I navigate all the landmines that you put out there. In terms of what I've seen at other governmental entities, I think, I believe you used the word, although it was the converse of it, referring to the other board, but transparency is critical. Openness, some of the other boards that I've briefed or provided internal audit reports to, almost all of those meetings are typically either televised or available. This was years ago when it was actually television, but available through the web, whatever the case may be. But a board that is, pardon the phrase, but hell-bent on providing transparency to the constituents, and is really rooted in ensuring that mission is accomplished, I think is one of the critical aspects. Your point about what the other committee maybe is lacking, successful committees need independent thought and feedback, and having, in this case, community members as part of a committee. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and obviously you just found a case or explained a case where it does exist. I've not personally come across a committee where you don't have members of the public at large. And a lot of that goes back to ensuring that you're bringing the right level of experience. So seasoned members who have seen things outside of just the government, who are informed about and perhaps actively involved in the government in some way, shape, or form, but who can bring that diversity of thought and questioning mindset and are separate enough from the actual functioning of the body that they're helping to govern, to ask an independent question. So that's the off the cuff, but hopefully that helps. And I think I at least navigated some of the landmines.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the second part of the question really, though, also, I appreciate your teeing off on the other elected body in the county, which lacks our safeguards and balances. But are there any other observations you would have in terms of, everything from the way we devise audit committee subjects and reviews to how often we meet or how we interface with the public or our external communications? I mean, and anything that comes to mind at all?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think I'd probably have to study it a little bit more.
Okay.
To provide something that's actually tailored to you. My experience with the county, I've been involved with internal audit for the last 2 years or so. We, RSM, don't typically participate in the audit committee meetings, but I love the opportunity to maybe spend a little bit more time studying and can provide you with that feedback.
Okay.
I can take that as a takeaway.
Great.
No red
When
flags.
are we?
No red flags. No, I'd say, quite honestly, even in prepping for this discussion and doing some of the due diligence, I'd say maybe the opposite. I see a lot of.
For the best.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of really good practices that have been put into place. I think a lot of that starts with the composition. I know some of the audit reports that we've issued in the past through internal audit have certainly generated some discussion, and everything that I've heard and seen is you're bringing that questioning mindset and providing strategic level thinking, which is.
When are we hearing from RSM, by the way, for our annual?
At CLA that you hear from annually, the external auditors in January.
Oh, okay.
For internal audit, you hear from Ken in the
Right, okay, great.
Just to follow on a little bit, I'm here on behalf of the Financial Affairs Advisory Commission also. But we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years doing performance reviews focused. And we had access to, I see you've used the word global. So, we had access online to countrywide reviews of boards and county practices. And, it wasn't so much as what was done wrong as who were the gold standards. So they would have 5 at the top and then they'd have a B+ group, and you could draw on the comparison and the successes they were having by following certain objectives. And some of that, of course, was built on international rules that people tend to follow. And I see you use the word global. Is this outfit global, and
Yes.
how do they reflect on that?
Yeah.
But also, is there a way, on the performance review issue, you could easily access this comparison of other counties countrywide, and places like Chattanooga and Austin, Texas, and Alexandria, Virginia were right up there. And so you could compare our practices to theirs. We were pretty high also, I have to say. But is there any kind of matrix like that you look at, that we could look at?
I can take that back. There's nothing that I'm currently actively using, but I can take to some of my colleagues to see if that's something they're using. Your reference to the IAA, they are
An
their
international
standards.
work.
Yes, their standards are generally recognized internationally. Some of the exhibits that I was referring to, going to your point about performance reviews, within the IAA guidance, it talks about some of the things that the county manager could be thinking about, as an example, relative to audit committee performance. There's not a checklist per se, but a list of questions that could be used to really step back and evaluate how effective is the committee overall. But I can also, again, take that back as a go back and come back.
One quick question for you. In your experience, I think we've worked out a pretty reasonable division between what the Office of the County Auditor does in internal audit, but in your experience in looking in other jurisdictions, could you comment about whether there is that split and sort of how we've navigated through it and how other jurisdictions have done that?
Yeah. Not every jurisdiction has a separate internal audit function from the independent function that reports up to the audit committee. But many jurisdictions have decided, I'm not going to be able to give you a statistic, but it's not uncommon for departments within governmental entities to want to have a separate function that they have a little bit more control over. It's not necessarily the right word, but that they can use to chase down certain issues or concerns that exist within a given department, as opposed to where the county auditor is performing more broad programmatic level reviews. So I'll maybe just give the simple answer of it's not uncommon, but the reverse is not uncommon as well. You do see a mix out there. Other questions? This was helpful.
Talked about sort of staffing and resources. Are there any benchmarks or, any reactions to, we have 3 full-time staff on the books, but we only, one position is frozen. So we have the 2 amazing OCA members as well as the internal.
Yeah, so one of the things that actually the IIA provides. They have a really great database of benchmarks. We have access to it, so here again, I'd be happy to take a look and provide some benchmark feedback on what shops look like.
That'd be really
Typically,
helpful both for
yeah.
us and for schools. They may or may not be interested in, but while we're looking, we can.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
might as well know.
I can almost guarantee you that it would be used as fuel for the need to fill additional positions.
Yeah,
Just based on the size of the organization.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to submit and ask for.
in there, there's like a magic budget button that like generates gold if you need it, right?
Yeah, it's not quite that cut and dry, but it will give you, based on size of an entity, overall, operating revenue for a given jurisdiction, input and feedback on what does the internal audit shop typically look like. So.
And I would be interested in some more benchmarks on committee membership size. I think, I like this a lot, but I have no real benchmark or comparison for how many people should be on
Yeah.
an audit committee. And I think sometimes, when we get into holidays or vacate, like it's really easy all of a sudden to feel like we're missing some really key people, even if it's just one or two people that aren't able to make it.
Sure. I can tell you, thinking about some of the commercial entities that I know, granted it's a different animal. The magic number seems to be 3, but governmental entities are much different, and typically the audit committees are a little bit larger in my experience. Yeah, you usually fill at least half of a boardroom. So.
I think this was very
course.
helpful, very great information, and I particularly like the section around like the 3 lines of defense, because I've heard that from in prior lives working with audit committees, like, well, what role is this? Who does this? Where does this fit in the large pie? So I think that slide really sums it up for who does what.
I mean, if I can tag on, I think one of the points community members and board members sometimes stumble over is in that independent role, right? You want transparency and independence. We have DMF and our county manager on the committee right now, and it feels like that is maybe different than other places, but any thoughts about, I think as we were creating the committee initially, that was a really important part. And I know Mark especially loves to spend absolutely as much time with the board members as possible. So it filled the need in his heart, I'm sure. But what advice do you have for us?
Yeah, I'd say think about how the structure, when you come back to what is one of the committee's main functions, and it is to provide independent and objective thought and oversight. So I think the question you should ask yourselves is the way that you're currently structured in terms of who's on the audit committee, does that in any way, shape, or form impair the objectivity and independence with which, going back to that charter and some of the responsibilities, does the county auditor truly have an independent of management, completely independent of management, an independent avenue to report concerns or issues and help navigate particularly sticky issues? That's one of the biggest benefits of an independent, truly independent audit committee is there will be sticky issues that arise. There will be times where I'm sure this has never happened, where the office of the county auditor or whoever the internal audit function is facing immense pressure from management based on a finding or a concern that's raised. So you really have to ask yourself, does the structure facilitate giving that person an independent outlet to go to escalate those concerns?
One last question, and this is a a much higher level issue, but what about AI? I mean, are there any like fairly easy and inexpensive ways that AI could improve the functions of the audit committee?
Without
Say
breaking
what?
Virginia
Without
law.
breaking Virginia law in the near term.
Yeah.
We have some constraints.
You know, it's interesting. I just gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago on AI as it relates to internal audit. And one of the things that we were starting the presentation with was just about the reach of AI and the way that it's viewed. Now, one of the statistics that came out of it was a global survey that was done of 500 different CEOs, was that 94%, I don't think I'm misquoting that, 94% of CEOs feel like AI can give just as good, if not better, advice as their committee members. Which whether or not that's true, the perception is from these CEOs that they feel like they can get good advice. I have bones to pick with that.
Can you tell us who the 6% are so we can?
The data was anonymized. You can't really go back and find it. The way that I'll tell you a little bit about how I use it in my daily life. I'll give you a great example. I had a client, this is a commercial entity that very acquisitive in nature. They wanted to do an audit over their business development and due diligence process. And we've been, as a firm, been pushing our people. We have Enterprise Copilot. We've been pushing our people to leverage it more and more. And I got off the call. My initial reaction was, well, I know 3 people who are experts in this area. Let me get on the phone with them and we can talk it through and come up with what the control objectives would look like. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and let me see what I can do with Copilot. And after some back and forth, came up with, I think it was a set of 7 different objectives, and it had sub objectives. I kept asking it to give me more detail. But the key was I didn't take that document and go back to my client and say, here we go, this is what we're doing. I took it back to that same group of SMRs, subject matter resources, and said, challenge this. What am I missing here? They said, this is actually pretty good, but here's an area that I would consider adding where we typically find some issues, but otherwise it's good. So I guess I share that little story to say AI should not be the only source of truth that you use, but as a committee member, you could leverage AI in a conversational way to ask about what are some of the recent headlines that have either plagued or benefited the county. What are the top 5 risks that state and local governments are addressing? And pull that information, obviously go verify anything before you depend on it, but leveraging it as a co-pilot or assistant, as the name implies, to ensure that you're maybe getting a little bit smarter about some of the issues at hand, but certainly not relying on it blindly. We're not there yet.
Could I have a little reflection?
Thank you.
Having danced a bit over the last few months with AI on something I know a lot about, tariff, trade law, because of what's happening at the CID and the Supreme Court. And AI doesn't replace human analytics. It, of course, is wonderful for immediate data. You know, you can't remember when something was passed and who the what the actual statute reflection, immediate. And that's so very, very helpful. But it depends a lot on how you ask the question.
Yes.
And how you follow up. As you say, challenging AI to reflect a little bit on points it may have made or may not have made. So something the audit committee might want to do before they, before deciding how to use it formally, is to test it out, have someone who knows a lot about it. Just play. And if you'll find where the really helpful parts of AI are, and of course, the immediate feedback is on just old data is a wonderful tool. But as far as I can see, on something that I know a lot about, it doesn't replace human analytics
Not there yet.
because you're reflecting on so many other things besides the cold data in a moment in time.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily the question you asked, but the other thing that the audit committee should be thinking about, and this is you going back to one of the responsibilities, which is staying abreast of emerging risks. I think 75% of my clients on the audit plan for the upcoming year have some semblance of challenging or addressing AI use within an organization. So whether that's looking at the governance of AI and how the organization is managing intake of use cases, what the requirements are for approving the rollout of an AI-based tool, or to the extent that governance has already been addressed and there are actually use cases that are being rolled out within the organization, taking deep dives on specific use cases and ensuring that there's continued feedback loops, that it's being used in a safe, responsible, and trustworthy manner, that any potential hallucinations or model drifts are addressed. But it is absolutely one of the emerging risks that we see a lot of committee members and internal audit shops.
Of our CTO.
And what, I know this is an audit, but what you all said is the same message that we sell our staff to. Is that, use it as a starting place, is a great source of information, but you always need to validate.
Yes.
And only use kind of when you
Only
with
with
the
the
enterprise.
little,
With the little green dot.
Or your
button.
enterprise.
yes. It's also been a learning curve. So.
Great, well, thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you, Maria, for help getting this coordinated. We
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Would you like me to stay? Would you like me to leave?
I would like you to do what you want to do.
Okay.
How much do
Have
you
a nice dinner.
Yeah.
I'll pull it.
Okay. I'll
Get upgraded to $10.
Go ahead, pick it. I want to do something.
Okay.
We make sure that the record shows that Thelma Askey is down here,
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry.
our fact rep.
A fourth pillar is to show up on time.
Yes. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah, moving on.
For the substance.
All right. Drive. What have we finished?
Okay, well, we have 2 reports to review with the committee this, I'm gonna say late evening or late afternoon. So we will first go over the enterprise, the IT enterprise architecture governance audit, which was a performance audit, and we are joined by Holly Hartel, our CIO. But what I'll do is I'll just give a brief overview of the audit with the objectives, what audit objectives we performed with this audit and what we found. And we'll give some conclusion statements and then open up for committee member questions. So you do have a copy of the report within your information that was sent out. So the audit objective, I mean, there were a couple of audit things that we wanted to focus in on with this particular audit. And one was really around the strategy for reviewing existing existing and future technology services across the county. I will say with this particular audit, this is an area that, the IT landscape of around the county, and it is decentralized. So we had to bake that into how we were looking at this particular governance process. We also wanted to make sure that there was some established controls and governance process for ensuring that we're mitigating some of the the risk of being in a decentralized area, like what that would bring. So such as redundancy of IT equipment. So if like we're using the same piece of technology in different areas of the county. So we wanted to take a look at our process around that. And also just the overall strategy for decommissioning outdated applications or underutilized IT assets in a timely and cost-effective manner. The audit was broken into 5 different areas, and I can talk real quickly about each one of those areas. One is the review of the governance practices, and that's where that is really, that's where the rubber meets the road, and how do we look at our governance practices around the county. So there's a couple of mechanisms that we have in place for that. One, DTS has their digital strategy map, a digital strategy for how we look at our IT platform, and it's just not on around acquisition or decommissioning technology, but it crosses into a number of areas. But part of that digital strategy did take a look at the kind of that governance process around acquisition of applications. And then how do we link some of the, to the extent, because it's decentralized, to the extent when we are bringing on equipment or technology in another area around the county, how do we link that into our digital strategy? The other piece, which I really applaud them for having, and again, because we have this decentralized process, but they have this group that they call the G10. And the G10 is where they're bringing all of the departments across the county to talk about, kind of what they're working on. Holly is sharing with the team what they're working on and what their capacity is and what they're doing, but also the departments can talk about kind of what they're thinking about, what they're doing. So that cross collaboration really is helpful for mitigating some of the risks that I was just talking about earlier about redundancy. The other piece of alignment of technology decisions with digital strategy, again, that was, to the extent that we're looking at technology needs and how do we linking them into our digital strategy. Having a software, part of this was also looking at our existing software application inventory management process and how do we make sure that we are keeping track. And it's just not making sure we have a list of everything, but we want to make sure how are we using that list to really manage the business to the extent that there are some cyber issues or something like that. We want to know exactly not only what is in DTS, but what are we using across the county, making sure we have that view. And then just the last piece of this effectiveness of software acquisition process, what that is. So when you look at the second one, adequacy of process, that was really looking at how do we design the process, whereas the effectiveness of software acquisition process was looking at test of design, or was looking at a test of effectiveness of that particular process. So that was the other part of the scope. Roll to the next slide, please. So hitting on the conclusion here and what are the overall conclusions? The county has established a framework for reviewing and existing and future technology services. Again, using that, I don't want to undersell that governance process that they have, and namely around G10. I'm sorry, I didn't mention ITAC, but there's also ITAC. I did spend time with the ITAC commission chair, taking understanding their role in this process as well. So I did speak with that. But yeah, taking a look at that. So they do have a really good framework around, kind of in that governance process. And then also taking a look at, from the point of where doing that test of effectiveness, found that where the DTS team was made aware and brought into technology decisions. So that was, they were effectively doing that. Where the area that we found where we could use some improvement is around how do we make sure that we have a really good, robust inventory. If you go roll to the next slide, I can go into a little bit greater detail on this particular finding, as well as the recommendation. But so what this is saying is, like, we don't have that full, county-wide portfolio view of all of the applications, cloud providers that are used around the county. And having that view, while we do have, DTS has a list of applications that are kind of the more broader applications that are used across the entire counties that they manage. They do have that listing, but what we don't have is being able to see, so DPR, for example, what is all the technology that is being used in DPR or cloud providers, or what is being used in TES or DHS. And why that is important that we have that is to make sure that, like, to the extent when someone is, and not only having that list, but making sure that list is available to other departments across the county, so that when they are thinking about procuring something, they have a place to go to say, wait a minute, does this technology or cloud provider or whatever, does it already exist? So they, the county has, the departments have that ability to check for that. The other thing is to know, like, if you're having any type of cybersecurity type issues, the DTS team will get vulnerability alerts or cyber alerts. And if they don't know what is being run in other departments, by being able to know in that inventory, then, it could bring some cyber risk to us by not knowing what do we have on site. So in developing the recommendation around this, is to really develop that tool that could be used not only for the DTS team, but really all of the other departments across the county, so that when to the extent that there's time to update technology, to retire or decommission technology, that we can go into this list to clean that up and to do that. But having this inventory again is very important. But the part on building this inventory, there is existing technology that we have already in the county that we could use and leverage. So it's not like we got to go run out and buy a new tool, but we'll need the DTS team will need some help with how to best leverage these tools. I mean, it's almost like I just got a new iPhone. Oh, Holly, I finally got an iPhone 16. I had to retire my iPhone 8 because apps stopped.
I did the same. I went from 8 to 16. It's very geometric.
Yeah.
And now you're good at
Yeah, so yeah, I finally got rid of that 8. So I didn't want to, but all the apps stopped working.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So anyway, yeah, having this inventory, like, one of the things, for example, so like I remember recently we had this alert come out from DTS saying that there was some technology, it was a cloud provider, that there was a failure, and I remember reading in that DTS alert, it said, so we're not sure if you have it. I mean, I'm not going to quote you, but it was to the extent that, like, if you're using this tool, you might be experiencing problems. But if we had the tool, if we could see everything, then it's not only like if you are running an issue and you have to bring down a system, at least you can go in and see what it's connected to and what customers are going to be impacted by that. So that's why, again, another, this recommendation of having this tool. But again, using, it's great that we have something here that will help us, but I think we just want to make sure that how do we best leverage that tool. And, I'm sure we have a lot of technology already in our hands, in our homes, in our cars and everything, but we just don't know how to fully use it. I'm sure your iPhone might really pop if we're push the right button. So we want to make sure that we're using that fully. So, and working with the DTS team, they were extremely helpful, very open. These auditors can work off of, openness and transparency, and felt like Holly and her team were very open and transparent, very helpful throughout the audit process, and very receptive to the audit finding recommendation and put together a corrective action plan to address this particular finding. So with that, I could turn it over to Holly.
Yep, great. I will start. First of all, thank you, Ms. Cunningham, Ms. Coffey, and Ms. AuC, and Ms. Lohr, and Mr. Bystad. Now it's Holly Hartel, the CIO. I have with me Laura Slavin, who is our Chief Operating Officer, as well as Richard Archambault, who is our division head for security, privacy, regulatory, as well as our CISO. As Wayne was saying, we do appreciate the collaborative nature, understanding what they were looking for and the conversations back and forth, and being able to understand what we were providing. And it's very, very helpful to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. I do want to highlight, I think that this was, it was obviously we can always improve. I think we are coming from a very, very good place. I think our technology practices are sound. I think that we are doing what we can with strategic alignment, risk management, as well as performance accountability. So I don't think there is any big, just make sure that's very clear, there is any big issues that they're finding. And hopefully that was clear from what you were saying. I can assure you that as requests come into DTS, we do review them, as Wayne was saying, from the strategic alignment perspective. We have a strategy that's 3 years old that's been on the public website. It's prominent on the public website. It's also prominent within our DTS internal SharePoint site. And it's something as our team gets requests in or has engagements with different departments, it's always back in mind. We always are thinking about those things moving. We also have a decentralized IT environment, as Wayne was referring to. So there are business applications and business things that the different departments need to make sure that they're executing on, that they own and manage the applications. But we have a responsibility as these things come into our environment to make sure that they are secure, to think about how does it interact from a cloud perspective? How are we thinking about the data and helping the departments think about that? I do want to make sure that the departments are actively engaging with us. As Wayne was saying, it's the G10, but we are having conversations both with executive leadership as well as with our different division heads to make sure there is a connection and we know where are you going? How do we make sure that we're bringing AI and new tools into what you're trying to do, as well as making sure you're doing it safely. I also want to highlight so that we do ensure that we are reviewing everything in partnership with the departments, using also DMS. We work very closely with procurement as things come in. If we have a policy that we are supposed to be reviewing everything, it's a policy. If that doesn't necessarily happen, DMF is very good in procurement side of making sure, hey, we're sending those to DTS review that. So we do appreciate that. We do think that there are things, as Wayne was saying, that we can do better. There's always something that we can do to advance our maturity of where we are. The list that he was referring to, we have an Excel spreadsheet that was put together several years ago. We maintain our core system enterprise applications, but as new applications come in from the different departments, yes, we know, but are we adding them to that list? And is that list available? No, that's not. What we want to do, and this is where Wayne was also referring to, we want it to be more than an Excel spreadsheet. There are tools in place, and we're actually looking, as Wayne was referencing, to try to implement tools that connects both our infrastructure, not trying to get too weedy, but our hardware asset management and our software asset management. How does that all look together? So as Wayne was saying, I know when there's an issue with an application or there's an issue with something, we see all the connectivity. We have an Excel spreadsheet right now. We have the tools that potentially could do that, but we need the resources to assist in being able to move forward in that. I also think it's important, some of the things that we've been working on is to make sure that the process that we were doing is modernized. So our intake process right now is an email. Trying to put that into a form so we can better track, then helping to create that process of creating the list will be a little bit easier. We also have been working on a RACI matrix. So to help the departments understand, what do we do? What do you do? So the RACI is the responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Let's create a better understanding and make that available for people to understand. When do I need to know to come to DTS? What should they be doing? And reduce some of the confusion. That our commitment to keeping moving forward is something I'm interested in. So the COVID framework that Wayne and Shirley used, there are some aspects that can we use that to help us kind of doing a self-assessment, and how do we figure out our roadmap of where it makes sense for us to be advancing from a maturity perspective. So we do believe the audit is a positive reflection of where we are, but we're hopefully interested in being able to make progress throughout the upcoming years. So with that.
This is a lot of work, both for our auditors and for DTS. And, I think you said it right off the bat, Holly, like we are starting from a really good place. And I think, being new over the last 2 years to audit in general, I think sometimes when there's only one finding, it's so easy to get into the depths and the weeds of that one finding. But I also think it deserves to be said, right? Like part of why we can go so deep on this is there's really only one major thing for us to be talking about here. And I think that's a pretty good sign overall. And, you know, we see you all as the board quite a bit, and we know how much active precaution is being taken, especially around the cybersecurity side. And so I think, you know, this is a really good place for us to start, and it does give us room to grow and a path forward, which is really helpful, because technology is going to be here to stay and only getting more complicated. Exactly. So happy. I don't have any questions, but
Anyone else have a question?
so and with
Yeah, because I know a little bit more about this, but so you can explain. So when someone in a department goes to Uzbekistan and buys a copy of Uzbekistan Cyber Raiders, he comes back, wants to load it on their computer.
Luckily, they've
Okay.
just got a reminder not to do.
No, I know, not to do that.
Holidays.
But it's so obviously you don't want that on your list, but I'm gonna, this question is really directed to Richard. How do you make sure that that actually isn't something that's on the network?
Candy Crush.
No, Candy Crush is acceptable. I just want to let you know.
Mark and I have approved that one.
So most end users do not have permission to install applications. So someone from the help desk or someone from the IT liaison in the department has to sit down and elevate permissions and allow that software to. We will get requests to review things like Uzbekistan Raiders, like, hey, is this okay? Oh, and so we'll do a review. Is it okay? What's the privacy policy look like? Is this a vendor that's trusted? Is this questioned? And, you know, the hive mind within DPS will all take a look at it and say, it should be fine. Or, yeah, absolutely not. But that's going to go on your home computer if you want to take that risk, not on your work.
Thank you.
I see up here, it says review of findings, singular, and then it says number 1. Are there no other findings? Is this the whole kit and caboodle?
This is it.
Okay, so just 2 questions. This is all, I take it, exclusively focused on software?
Yes.
So have you done or are you contemplating a like review of hardware? Computers, iPads, cell phones, equipment?
I know DMF did something on cell phones.
We did an inventory audit on servers and separately cell phones. Done both.
We meaning internal audit?
Yes.
Okay, and because I do remember hearing something about that with, some people not, returning their phones after they left or
Yes.
whatever. How long ago was that, Maria?
John, can you return your phone?
The iPhone 8.
Look, because all of our audits in a
Right.
transparent nature are on the website.
Right. Okay, so do you think it was long enough ago that it might be time to refresh it or
Kim has
not?
been doing follow-ups until all findings are closed. So yes, he is having ongoing discussions. It's continuing to evolve and progress.
So you're still doing follow-ups from an audit that was done in 2018?
Yes.
Got a lot of progress.
Yes.
Okay. Could we maybe have a mini report at the next audit committee meeting?
How about in January when that would be January,
Sure.
next one.
Yeah.
That's when we come.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then my second question is this seems really valuable to me. And I'm just wondering if there's any, we have 4 or 5 different constitutional officers and offices who we give varying amounts of our county budget to. I mean, I'm wondering if this is in any way extrapolatable or helpful at all to say the treasurer or the Commonwealth's attorney or, other constitutional offices.
So it's two points on that, and I'll let everybody else elaborate, which is that we do provide a significant amount of assistance to all the constitutional offices to have access to our network. and our systems. And so Holly and Richard and Laura can speak to that. Separate from that, they do have access to state systems, which there's also protocols to make sure those state systems, as feeble as they are not interacting with our systems. So let other people.
And one of our areas of interest is that we cannot require them to ask us to review, but we do want them to offer to have us engage and review to create that list. It's in everyone's best interest if they work with us. I don't see why they wouldn't in that case, because so we see into this anyway, and they are using our network, and it makes sure that their applications that they're using are safe and secure, and the information that they're providing is not putting anything at risk.
So how do you foster that conversation and communication? And do you think you are where you need to be in that regard?
I think we have more, I think we're in a good relationship position to do that. And I think that they would be, and if we ask them to do that, I honestly feel like they would be willing to do that. It's in their best interest. And I think the relationship we have related to these things, I feel like they are absolutely interested in helping us.
I mean, it sounds like that would be a helpful thing to maybe.
And that is one of the things that it's referenced in the report, and we also want to try to pursue. I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, well, I mean, I'd be interested in some follow-up on that as well in January or March or whenever. I mean, if we really think that it's something that's worth refining.
Keep in mind, we'll do a follow-up audit to this.
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's another aspect of this that I think could bear fruit.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we've done 3 audits: endpoint devices, laptops, iPads, that kind of thing, wireless and servers, 3 different audits.
Okay.
And we'll rotate back at some.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maria.
I have a few questions. We're coming out of the federal government perspective, it's a lot stricter than what the county does by a lot. But I guess I have a question about when an end user requests an installation, can you just auto-populate your Excel spreadsheet every time somebody asks you for an install?
To that degree yet. So,
But you could take the information, what they're asking for and just not
oh,
auto.
like a person could put it in, yes.
But the person doing the approval seems like the natural person to put it into the software inventory.
Yes, a person could do that. So when you said auto-populate, I'm thinking like some sort of automated process. We don't have that.
No, but like when you get a request for an installation, it seems like the ideal time to include that. And also to run checks within the spreadsheet for several things, which is the same person putting in multiple versions of the software, right? Without taking off one that's old. Does everybody in the unit have the same version of the software? Do different pieces of equipment have different things? Are there things on there that are not included in the inventory because people are like, well, I don't really use it for work, but I've got it on my machine. But they may be vulnerabilities. So this goes to the question of like the issue of consistency primarily that you're trying to promote. So I think the inventory alone is a good start, but unless you use that inventory to do checks on what's going on and to help the units do checks on what's going on.
I agree, but this is where I also think you don't want to do it in a spreadsheet. And there are tools that have the capabilities, and briefly talked about some of our interest in trying to implement a couple of tools that are in a platform we already have that will connect the infrastructure, the software, kind of give the visibility into it so that we don't have to maintain that in a spreadsheet.
No, I understand, but I guess my question is, so are the county systems all operating independently of each other, or are they all into an enterprise server?
There's multiple servers and there's multiple connections and there's multiple things that are in the cloud too. It's not a simple infrastructure, right? It's quite complicated, in fact. And so this is why the tools are important, because for us to keep up with all of that in a spreadsheet, that's not.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm past the spreadsheet. My question
Sorry, I
is
can
more about when you use it, how are you going to use the information? Because it isn't sufficient to just say, we know what people tell us is on there if we don't know what's omitted that should be on there. Maybe security software whether there are multiple versions of people, things on different software which represent, older versions often represent vulnerabilities, whether whether there are legacy things sitting on the computer that nobody ever bothered with because nobody ever used anymore, but it's also a vulnerability. So it doesn't sound like it's possible to do that as a check in a centralized way. Is there thinking that the inventory might be used as a point of departure to, develop those protocols and share them out with the different units so that they can?
Yes, I think one of the things that comes to mind when you're talking about that, we will be able to see, or can see, who has what applications and what are they doing, and are they using it or not. We also have the departments who are, I mentioned earlier, are going through their budget, right? And saying, well, am I paying for something? If I'm paying for something that someone's using, I'm going to turn that off. The other side that I'm really interested in is from the change management perspective and being able to see, hey, we're doing work on a server. What applications is it going to impact? Because right now we have I think a really good change management process, but we can make it better to say, all right, listen, I know I'm doing this work. We're not relying on somebody's knowledge of all the places they think it connects. Well, we could be able to see, okay, when we take down this server, when we're upgrading a server, when we're moving something to the cloud, this is what we need to be aware of. That's something that I'm really looking forward to. And that's something, one of the potentials that I think is beneficial for us. If I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I guess, I'm less knowledgeable about the management piece of it than I am about the security piece of it. And for example, I worked on regulation one time, deal with, unfortunately, water systems. And the fact that, all these water systems that have automation for things like treatment, right? These water treatment facilities, their cybersecurity is non-existent, largely in the United States. They're like, yeah, we know we should have compartmentalized. We know we should have upgraded our software. We know we should have, we have the procedures, we have the budget. We've kind of done it, but we haven't really done it. Our people aren't trained. Because as people move in and out of systems, for example, or in this case, not treatment plants, but departments, they also may be unaware of things like, well, there's this legacy program on here. I guess I'll just leave it. It may be an open door for a cyber attack, right? So I guess maybe it's a separate question as far as the cybersecurity, but I guess the question I'm asking is whether this system of inventory and how the system of inventory can be used to bolster the cybersecurity without, for example, installing new software for cybersecurity.
I think it would be additive, right? Because the more visibility you have into these things in a more automated fashion, the better off it would be. I think we do a lot of that already, right? I think that the team does an amazing job of already looking at those things. So it would make it easier for them to be able to perform that work.
Right, as long as the software is the only issue, but you have the users. See, that's where my concern comes in with the inventory is great. Protocols should come out of that are then delegated out, and people need to follow those because people move in and out of government. And it's always a concern as to how users are interacting with the software and hardware as well. And that is not something that you.
The human aspect to it.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I think I understand the question a little more now that I've heard you talk about it. So from a configuration management, this laptop looks like that laptop. Maria's got one, there's one here, one here. What do we do to make them consistent? So we deploy a very consistent image of the base operating system. We use software tools to automatically install the enterprise applications. So you get everything by default that you need. And then there are some
updates. I will say they are very good at making us update very
Not always at the
regularly.
Not always at the best time.
Never but you can only I will say that they only let us postpone like twice, basically.
Yes.
So everyone is getting the upgrades at the same time.
And so there are applications that require manual install, but that's not the core of what we do. And as far as applications hanging around, when someone leaves, that laptop is wiped and new image and issued to somebody else or recycled and destroyed. And so we do a great amount of configuration management. We were about to ask for money to up our subscriptions for the tool set that does that configuration management because we are at like tier 1 and there's a tier 2 available. And as we were describing that, request for money, we got a note from Microsoft saying that's now going to be included in our licensing. So at some point next year, we can.
One.
Yeah,
I know.
right. I'm like, oh, hey, we're in this conversation. Yeah, take that number and wipe it away.
Right.
Right? Because they've just said it's going to go into the base subscription. So yay, we get more tools, and that will bring our maturity up to the level 2, which is greater, better on the Microsoft side. And it's an evolving area, but we do have a lot of controls, and we will have some new tools.
So what percentage would you say of the software that we use as employees is actually on our laptops versus elsewhere? Because in my department, very little is on our laptops. It is almost everything we use is elsewhere.
Our last census of applications, more than 60% is cloud. We have a diminishing amount of things that are in our data centers, on our workstations. Those things are now browser-based. We have things like GIS that need a big, beefy workstation with lots of cards in it to run GIS, but that's rare now. Most things are like, what website are we surprised?
Financial system, the HR system are
I log
online,
into.
that they're on the web,
On base.
on base.
So and looking at our peer jurisdictions, we're ahead in our cloud journey, which is helpful because we're not managing the security and packages for those cloud systems. They are. And every piece of software we have on our servers, we're managing that security. We have peer jurisdictions that still have a lot of stuff on their servers and have to apply patches all the time and keep up with all that. But the cloud software subscriptions take a lot of that.
So what kind of software, what's the department or unit that has the most, that would contribute the most to this inventory, would you say? Because it seems like most of them.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
I think DHS is a lot of their state, so it's not our applications.
So does DES have, those are also commercial applications that they're using. They're not creating.
Well, there have been applications that the different departments have created that we work with them on, those are the cloud services. We work with them. But I'm still saying that DES, most of their applications are commercial. And we've, in a number of the different purchases, we've engaged, worked with them on the RFP process all the way through to, all right, well, let's look at the contract details and make sure, once again, what information are you sharing? Are you putting anything at risk? Are you sharing too much information? What does the contract say related to, in the AI world? Are we developing an LLM using our data, making sure that those things are not.
Richard, did you want to comment at all about SCADA systems? Because I know Luann was going there to the extent that we can't comment on them.
I don't like to. It's one of the most sensitive areas.
Right.
Okay.
So you were referring to water pollution control or water treatment. So.
And I will be a little bit demure and say we are substantially advanced above most jurisdictions in the United States. And that's, I'm comfortable saying.
Okay. I just wanted to address that because
for sure.
That's top of mind.
Wide variety of SCADA security.
People have written their own software to.
Yeah, we have been able to put some tool sets in that others have not.
Thank you.
Can confirm something we think about at a policy level as well.
So it sounds like this will actually be more, as more and more goes to the cloud and as you maintain greater control or standardize the control over purchase and things like that, you actually, the inventory will be useful, but not critical for the management because you'll have the protocols.
Yes. I also think it'll be helpful for people, this is where the mention was about the inventory list being available, for people who are looking for something. So that's something that they will come and talk to us. Do we have something? And then we have to get back to them. Well, would it not be better for them a little more self-service? Hey, I'm looking for a tool that does that. Oh, we already have that. So that will be beneficial for us.
Right. So for example, our agency had a software data warehouse, essentially a warehouse, and you could go there if it was approved and they would allow you to install the latest version from that, data software center for a limited number of things, Adobe, Microsoft, certain applications that were enterprise licenses. So those are really, those are just ways to really increase the efficiency, but then, users find a way to install.
Well, this is also where I think we have really good relationships. We talked about the G10, but there's also a tech coordinator meeting that happens. We're communicating the same information on a regular basis with different tech coordinators in different departments. We have conversations, Laura and I have conversations with the leadership within the different departments. So it's like you're saying the same information to different people in slightly different ways and kind of, but keeping consistent with the message. It all helps kind of get people moving in the right direction.
And have you had any pushback?
I mean, there's always gonna be a little pushback on something, right? I mean,
Other than the county board office, does anything come up?
I mean,
I mean, you haven't had any outright, we choose not to comply with that.
Oh, no.
no.
That doesn't,
Not an option.
I mean,
that's not an
yeah.
option.
We do have the right to say, like, right, absolutely no. I mean, and we're not gonna do something, I said, I have complete faith in our tech perspectives view, security, and architecture. We're not gonna put anything at risk. We have not had to do that.
Today, when someone procures a software product, does that flag to you no matter where it's being purchased throughout?
This is where, in some places, we don't see those until afterwards.
Okay.
We're having, this is where some of we have a policy, but do we have all the right processes? Right? You know, we require people to come to us. That is done based on you do know we're out there. We can also stop it, as Richard was saying, if we have to install something. Well, no, we're not going to install something.
But could procurement be a gateway for you?
We are.
They are.
Okay.
They are a huge
Yeah,
help.
but this has been a persistent issue, and I'm not gonna call it a problem because you're trying to balance things. People have P cards. Limit the categories they can use to buy things, but that doesn't mean that we have eyes on every single
is-
purchase as opposed to what goes on the system.
And you can buy technology from any kind of variety of merchants, so you can't even say, we do have a technology merchant category code that we limit, certain people can only use that technology, those technology stores. But think about it, you can buy software at Target now, right? You can buy software at any number of places, so it's hard to just completely lock down. We do as much as we can.
And those are the ones who are coming around afterwards, right? Did you look at this? Let's get going back to the data and the security stuff.
But they're told repeatedly also, we do try, right? We send out the policy, we remind people they're supposed to be asking you before they use it.
And internal audit checks.
Yes, they do.
I
That's
get
a good
I
point.
get a call several times a year. Hey,
Right.
this showed up on a P card. It looks like software. Okay, yes, let's take a look at that. Why was that put on a P card? Is it safe? Is it not safe? And so there is, the internal audit is fantastic about that.
And then there's
I can answer
some former P card holders.
Right, yes, there are.
Right, that's very effective.
But we do audit quarterly P cards and Ken does and Moon both about those.
Great. Any other big questions?
I guess my only one is kind of around budget and like the interaction between this future list and database development with finance and funding, because it seems like it would be a really good tool, right, for us to be able to aggregate and say DES has $10,000 worth of software systems and DHS has this, and being able to see some more kind of comprehensive cuts to the data if we're able to kind of connect the financial side to this future database.
It is, and it's a nice to have, but once going back to the budgetary controls that we have in place, the department's reviewing, we're not in a disaster.
No, of course not.
Right,
no.
so
Yeah.
this is where when you think about what are our budget priorities, this is important. Are there other things that might be higher?
Yeah. Yeah. But it is like a possibility down, like, I'm not saying tomorrow, but down the line of something we could have that. I do think it would help us as we go through budget processes, having gone through twice now. It is a little opaque sometimes of what is where in the budget. And so it seems to me like it could be a very informational tool, and it is a nice to have. It's not like hindering us at the moment, but there's like, I think, another level of understanding of how technology exists within our departmental budgets that would be wonderful to get to.
If I could address that, because I know this is a subject that's come up a few times over the last few years, and I know that Jackie Snelly and I have talked about this maybe 6 or 7 times, but it's absolutely a valid question. The amount of time and effort that's involved, I'm not sure right now is going to end up being a priority, because we have so many things. We have the purchase of the software clearly is an IT expense. We have a lot of other things we spend money on that have an element to them of technology that we then have to come up with cost allocation models to figure out. And sometimes that, it's not a reason not to do it,
Is there
but
like
it is.
an easy?
And one I can think of is like really small though, but like Parks is looking at buying Cricut printer, but it has software in it.
Oh, like a cry, like the thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, but there's software in it.
Yeah.
That's a really minor.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
technology coming into a lot of the things that we use, whether, you know, with the, you all will have better examples than I can. It would just require us to go through and peel that
Right.
stuff out. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but
Yeah.
there's
No, that's
work.
fine.
You're saying the
To
Internet
what-
of Things, you
Right.
know, you're basically have a thing that now has a chip in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That you use to turn it on.
Right, yeah.
I guess the question of like, for what purpose, right? You were saying that it's opaque, but what is the challenge? Like, so we have a list and we give you the cost. What does that, how does that help you?
I think because software as a service is growing in every organization. You know, where when you bought a Microsoft license or two in 1990, it didn't add up as much. It now does add up a lot, and it adds up in an ongoing committed way. It's not just a one-time purchase. So as a board, to be able to understand that and to see where it's headed, even just to understand the whole number, and then ideally to understand how you're controlling those costs and managing, you know.
I think there's an even more relevant, maybe not more relevant, but a relevant additional point, which is the productivity question of how your employee productivity goes up, depending on the software. So you can do a return on investment for the labor savings or labor productivity improvements you get if you know you bought this software system for DES and now you don't have to hire. Well, it does require people with some understanding of like the interaction, the network externality, if you will, of how those things work together. But if you have the inventory of the software and you know your personnel, you know, obviously you know that from HR, you know the personnel distribution, you know who's doing what jobs. You can look over time at how the mix of specialties within a department has changed, the number of hours have changed, and the software. Yeah, I mean, it's you can do it not in a correlation way, but in a causation. Sorry. So it's very, to me, labor productivity is like a huge possible outcome of having a detailed cost inventory of your software that you're putting in, and how it's used and how it's supposed to be used and how it could be used to improve.
And I mean, I can see some of it as well for us at the high level. You know, we don't see a lot of our departmental day-to-day life. And so sometimes there are really critical systems or things that are behind, you know, DES or libraries, for example, that, you know, right now, like all we see is like libraries, like catalog management, but like how much of that cost is from a person versus the technological system that runs Libby and that runs like everything that's behind it. We can ask those questions on one-offs, but unless we know the question to ask for the specific line of business, we don't really see that right now. And so that's kind of more what I'm thinking is like better understanding of what is happening in the department and how it's happening. But I think there's a lot of different perspectives on what could come out of it.
Sorry. Any questions for us? Requests for additional audits?
I have a list that I'm keeping.
Yes. Yes. We take
The AI
recommendation.
audit.
So we'll move into the, it was DTS audit season, just so you know.
But I have a list.
It was DTS audit.
Survived.
So now we're going to talk about a follow-up audit on DTS contract management. So there was an original audit of the DTS contract management performed in, the report was issued around May 2021. There was another follow-up done in May of 2022. Came on board, going through all of the open audits, the follow-up actions. I came to follow-up audit on DTS contract management. There were, I believe, 6 or 7 items that remained open. Did the audit, there was still one item open, and that's what this audit reflects, is to provide, to verify that the corrective action had been applied to this. And this, the recommendation around contract management contract file management was not consistent, was really about having a process for making sure that DTS contract managers, how they review contract administration policy and making sure they've got the tools and records in place to ensure compliance for contract administration. And a number of activities have since been put into place of making sure that they have the tools, as well as an individual that will assist in providing kind of an independent, kind of that second line of defense, using that terminology. So using that second line of defense where they would do inspections and making sure that contract managers are following the guidelines that are. So the item is officially closed. No further action required, and I have issued the report. So thanks to Holly and her team once again.
Thanks to the team for following up on doing everything we needed to do.
So that was it for DTS season.
Questions? Excellent. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All of you.
Remember, fishing is increasing during the holidays.
Yeah.
My husband's really good. Watch out, don't click.
Don't click on those deals.
Yeah, no good deals.
I think Richard sits in his office trying to figure out how to screw me over every day. I succeeded once in the last year.
They're good.
They're
They're
really good.
I'm suspicious of everything though now, Richard, that comes in.
I know. I do think I over-report at this point.
That's okay. I mean, I get enough of it too.
Yeah.
I'm a target. I get random stuff.
I'm so glad we have checks and balances still.
Excellent. All right, moving on.
You should actually
Move
leave.
on.
Yes, you should. I mean,
unless you want to know if anything.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will give a quick update on to our 26 audit work plan status. Go to the next slide, please. Oh, so just real quick, I'll hit the year, just kind of give a year at a glance view of the full audit work plan and talk about where things are. We'll talk about community benefit, the status of that particular audit, because that is we're in phases of that. And just a quick overview of the 26 performance audits that will be things underway, and then just some administrative items. Next slide, please. So this is just the broad view of everything that's on our radar and where things stand. So starting at the top here with performance audits, as you will see, those are all of the audits that have been scheduled for the year with some indication of kind of where things stand. So starting with community benefit, and I'll go into a little bit more detail here in a second on that. But that work, that was a carryover audit from fiscal year 2025. We are in the stage now where we're going over, we're starting to draft findings and vet findings with management. So we're at the field work is at the 99% completion mark. We've got a few open items, but we're at the point where we're writing up reports, writing up the findings. As you can see, the IT audit that was just finalized, so that has been marked, it's completed, as well as the DTS follow-up. As you can see, so there's a red line going down in December. That's kind of where we are today. What you're seeing with each of those chevrons, where you see the gray dotted lines, that reflects where the audit was originally scheduled. So a lot of our audits that in the work plan had to shift off to the right. So you will see the various audits and where they have been rescheduled. The audit on business continuity, I'll talk about that here in a second, that we are doing some pre-planning on that. So there is some pre-planning discussions that are underway. We are, our plan is that we will be able to get to the procurement process, being able to get that announced in the mid-late January timeframe. We are also planning to, when we move the HR recruiting process on it, there's actually going to be some overlap. And we're going to kind of dual track those two audits at the same time. So there's some, we can see that there's some efficiencies of kind of lumping those together. And then flood resiliency has been pushed off to the late April timeframe. Now, I'm going to jump down to audit infrastructure here for a second, down at the bottom, because you see fiscal year 2027 plan. So we're going to begin the planning cycle for what we're going to do in fiscal year 27 in April. So that will involve having some discussions with each of the audit committee members to start talking about risk, is what RSM, what Nate was just talking about here. So we're going to engage in some of those conversations. So we're going to try to get through these other, get as much of the HR, business continuity, procurement, as much as that completed as possible, so that we can build some capacity for the 27 fiscal year 27 plan discussion. The follow-up audits, I know Lisa is underway. I've got one piece of documentation that I'm waiting on so we can close that out. And then ECC, fire, STAR, and housing grants that will likely, they will start in really into the new fiscal year. So that's why they're kind of hanging off the map here. And I'll talk, I've got another update on follow-up on it so that it can go into greater detail in a minute. And also under just audit infrastructure, this is just Shirley and I, we're changing the tires of the car as we're driving it. So these are just things that we're working on behind the scenes, kind of the kind of different tools that we have to help us do our jobs, and matrices and things like that to help us do our jobs. So we continue to work on those. So as you can see, it's a lot going on for us. But even squeezing in, with community benefit, as you can see, we did IT at the same time. There were, during that period of while we were able to go ahead and get that started, there was a number of things that we were doing with the CPHD team and getting documentation in. So there were times where we're like, okay, well, we could have, kind of what's our night job? So we would switch over and do the IT audit as our night job while we were doing the community benefit audit at the same time.
Yeah, you were saying that the police one was not on track primarily because you're waiting.
I'm waiting on.
But it's a follow-up.
Yes, it's a follow-up.
Now, of these, can we tell which ones are follow-ups and which ones are?
Well, yeah, so if you look all the way off to the left there, you'll see follow-up. And then there's
Oh, of course.
there's a swim lane for
I see.
follow-ups,
Okay.
performance, and audit
All
infrastructure.
right, you got it. Sorry, too obvious.
No worries.
So just as a reminder to myself, the ECC fire and police follow-up is in connection with overtime.
Yes, those were original audits that were done by my predecessor.
Right.
And following up on the open recommendations.
Okay. And when we say HR recruiting process, this does not mean the recruiting process for only HR employees, right?
Countywide.
Or does it?
No.
Okay. So it's the recruiting process is housed and centralized at HR.
Right.
So that's why you have HR there. Okay. So I guess a corollary question for the procurement process. This is an enterprise-wide procurement process review.
So what that will be is looking at how the various departments, because departments also manage their procurement.
Right.
So how are those departments of making sure, how are those departments? So looking holistically across those departments, how are they doing their procurement, managing their procurement process and management practices of their contracts, not of EMF procurement. I mean, there's going to be overlap there. So to the extent that audit. Why am I thinking about audits? To the extent that a procurement intersects with DMF, I mean, we'll see what that is. But again, actually I just called Maria today and just having kind of a pre-planning conversation to occur right after the first of the year of like how to start scoping this out so we can get ready to mid-January. Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Any other questions? Here at a glance.
I mean, I guess a question to the committee is there anything in federal space or, is there anything that you're learning about risks in the world that should cause us to potentially change the order, or is there anything missing? It is a different world order than when we started planning this year.
But the flood resilience rely on federal funding.
Is what?
Does the flood resilience rely, is that an infrastructure project?
The original recommendation certainly included some federal funding, but Mark, you.
Yeah, the vast majority of it is local funding. If FEMA existed, we might be able to ask them, but more money, but they
Well, I
don't.
was just gonna say, it's largely federal, there's not much point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like police, ECC, fire, they all have some overlap.
Well, actually, Susan, you make a good point. And so like with the kind of diminishment of federal oversight in every possible way,
Right.
including with various inspectors general offices. Does that help us think about how we might need to beef up auditing it across the board? I mean, not just in terms of what our capacity is, but both internal audit and external audit. I don't know. I mean, Mr. Manager, maybe you have.
Well, I don't know either. I will tell you that, and Maria may have more sense of this, but the extent that the federal government came into audit programs, trying to think of instances where that's happened, and I can't really recall many. I know like the Federal Transit Administration at one point did an audit. DOJ did an audit, but I think that was actually the state does an audit of our DCJS funding.
CDBG.
Yeah, CDBG, we have some of those. And so I will tell you this, which is that as of right now, we still are getting letters from HUD and from FTA about audit issues. So I would have to go back and take a look at that.
So maybe it's not as bad as it at first appears, or?
Well, I honestly don't know. I mean, I think it's bad in a lot of ways. That may not be one of them, but I would have to go back and do an assessment. I don't know.
Oversight of contractors might be an issue, but to the extent that contractors, the county uses contractors, they're less. Well, it's kind of a knock-on effect. When the federal government, nurse contractors are fairly strict, and they're very strict about it. Used to be very strict in enforcing them. It meant that the contractors were doing work with other government entities. It was a knock-on effect of they were following the rules because they had to for the federal, so they're already ready to do it. To the extent that oversight from the federal government isn't there anymore, it may mean the need to just slow down a little bit and look more carefully at contractors. That, just the process is just to make sure that they still are following whatever the county requirements are for them, because there's no, there is no extra body to reinforce that.
Teacher is turned away from the class, right? So
Well, yeah, Marie could talk, I don't know if it's related to it, but we have in DMF, we're doing the audits on, with Dolly, what is the?
Prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage. So Arlington County is doing prevailing wage audits. No other jurisdiction in the region is
Only the
doing
Commonwealth.
or in the Commonwealth is doing prevailing wage audits.
But is that to help you set employment wages?
So they said, so Dolly said certain wages for various trades. And then we are doing compliance. We have somebody who is a wage compliance, that's his sole job, is to review payroll certifications that come from the vendors to prove that they're paying the prevailing wage.
Yeah, the reason why.
And just field audits to make sure that they're doing the right things in the field, that the people are being paid properly, that there's signage, that kind of thing.
The reason why I brought that up, to your point, Luann, about contractors, is that you can have a contractor that's doing business in 10 jurisdictions in Virginia. In Virginia, we're the only one that gets on their case about following these rules. Sometimes they blow us off. And so the fact that to think that local governments can push on contractors that are doing business across many jurisdictions is really a potential flaw. I mean, with the local governments can't step in and have that same kind of oomph that the state or feds have had.
Yeah.
It's a real problem that's going to happen. Yeah, what are you going to do about it, John?
Yeah, John. It's a good question. No, but it's good we're talking about it. I don't know that we're gonna solve
in the
anything
next
here,
minute.
but keep us honest about.
Moving on.
And on to community benefits, the status of the audit. As I mentioned earlier, we are entering the reporting phase, and we're beginning conversations of discussing the findings with management. We have a number of meetings already scheduled on the books. Those meetings will also continue into January to discuss the potential findings that we have. Again, as a reminder, areas of focus, I mean, it was really taking the community benefits and looking for how did we implement, track, and monitor for delivery of these particular benefits. So had a number of meetings with, clearly CPHD, but also DES, DPR, Planning Commission. Also, we've been working with DMF on this next piece. We just completed up quite a bit of work of verification of developer contributions and making sure, yes, did we receive the money? Did it get recorded to the right account? Within our sample of, we had 8 sampled sites, but of the 7 of the 8, we were talking this about $40 million of additional community benefit for bonus density. So quite a bit of money. When you look at the full community benefit package, even that number goes, was that closer to 70? When you talk about base, it's closer.
I can't remember. There might have been one that was a development work that we counted initially as development contributions.
Okay. But the number would go slightly higher. We also did work on for some of the other non-monetary community benefits, the non-monetary type of contribution. So this is like kind of the meeting space, whether it's art or open space. So Shirley and I did a tour around the county and took some pictures and looked at all the various things. So we did take a look at those. And again, we're just pushing hard to get through to have a report release January, probably late January, maybe early into February. But again, we want to make sure we do the proper due diligence of speaking with management and having those discussions. Start discussing the findings in public.
Is there an obligation for the non-monetary for maintenance beyond just like, here's your public meeting space, we're done?
I mean, that's what we were getting into. I mean, like, there are some community benefits that we had to do some extra test work on because it's, I don't want to say squishy, but it's like, it's kind of, we want to make sure that, like, how do we make sure we don't lose those? So we're taking a look at that, what I call the monitoring piece or maintenance, but we want to make sure that we don't lose this. So we're spending time in that area.
So there's not, for example, the entity that creates that non-monetary space has no obligation once it's created. Is that right?
Do you mean where the event space is located or where a park?
I mean, I'm thinking, so in my world, it's like a endangered species mitigation bank. So you have an obligation to maintain that space that you've created over, well, technically perpetuity, usually it's 30 years.
I mean, all the conditions will be written differently, but oftentimes when a developer provides something of that nature, they will maintain the responsibility for taking care. That the condition aside
for the time specified and whatever.
Oftentimes it's in perpetuity. As long as the thing exists, they have to take care. That's often.
But the challenge so often is, or at least often enough, is, like with a public meeting room, management companies change, landlords change. And before you know it, the meeting room is used for storage space or not accessible to the public. I mean, you just don't know. So.
The challenge is that Wayne and Shirley
Right
have
at
been,
that bar.
I think that will be touched upon,
Right.
in the report. And-
They'll get it all fixed, don't worry.
That's an important consideration. It's like, what is the obligation for anything that continues past? I mean, a monetary payment is just a payment, you walk away.
Right.
So the question is, what's a realistic expectation? Regardless of what it says, I think a contract can say perpetuity, but that's unrealistic. So.
Right, but you want to make sure you've got at least the sheet of paper that says,
Right.
I always have access to this. I always should have this, right? Make sure that it's.
I wished I had asked this question at the last meeting, but I didn't do so. Have you selected in your, I think you said eight site plans? Were they calibrated at all from, to ensure that they were representative in terms of geography and communities around the county? And also with respect to the type of site plan, in other words, residential versus commercial, different, because you can have, a different array of community benefits, say for an office building that might not exist for a hotel or an apartment project or something.
We spent weeks reviewing data on available site plans that met our conditions. And we did a lot of slicing and dicing to make sure that we would have a representative sample. Across lots of different perspectives. So yes.
Okay.
As
We're
well
very
as community
careful.
benefit type.
Lots of different
Maybe
benefit
it's of your
types.
early input.
Okay,
Yes.
right.
I think that I believe that we have picked a really good sample and I think it taught us a lot.
And the report will in all likelihood contain some robust recommendations, you
I
anticipate?
think it would be odd for us to write a report that didn't have recommendations.
Okay.
That
Right.
was
right.
a really good.
Trust but verify, as they say. Well, that's great.
You bring the popcorn for the change.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have plenty to discuss.
Yeah, I would say this is like the first time that we've collectively tried to dive deep into the community benefits, and it's, there's more to study, but this is gonna be a great step. Even just the conversations to date have been a good step forward of helping understand each other and hopefully to communicate to the public as well.
So
Right.
do community benefits account for sort of byproduct effects? So for example, an open space that people can gather at or the festival at. There then maybe food trucks and other things. Is that's not really part of it. You're only looking at the use of the space itself, right? Not
It can be everything from, a developer wants to build more density than they can by right. And so we negotiate a package of benefits with them that might include transportation improvements in front of the building, like different lighting, parks, a privately owned but publicly accessible park on the parcel or community meeting room. So it's a whole suite of
The
things.
effects of doing that though. So for example, so you build a public park, taxes go up around that area because the dollar value of those things. So
Right.
is that accounted for? So direct and indirect effects of having the space, that's kind of, I mean, from an economic standpoint, that's really, really important because the space can generate tremendous benefits from direct and indirect monetary and non-monetary benefits that if we aren't crediting them, then, the space may not be available all the time, but when it is available, here's what happens. Here's the evidence. I know that's outside your purview, but I'm kind of curious whether, I guess it's more of a caution to not
Assume.
assume that
Yeah.
a space that isn't as it might have originally been intended, or to the extent that it might have originally been intended, does not have large value to the community. Yeah, but also that there's negative impacts of things too, that people put in, any kind of amenity you put in potentially has an impact on dollar value of housing, the type of community, type of people that congregate around the area, how lights in an area mean people are going to use the space later at night. Those are the kind of things that, in an economic analysis, you would go back and look at all of those things. So I'm not saying go do that. But if a report comes back and says, well, this space is here, it's in reasonable condition, but we didn't see anybody there. We talked to everybody. It doesn't seem like people use it except in the spring. Doesn't mean that community benefit isn't huge. So when I see the word benefit, it always worries me that not really counting the benefits. So,
The nomenclature is a little,
Wording is maybe challenging, yeah.
right, because
that may be one of
it's
the
really
recommendations.
amenities. It's really community amenities or money to support the decision of the board for amenities.
It encompasses so many things potentially, because sometimes a community benefit could be undergrounding a utility that is not currently underground, and that is a pretty clear, I wouldn't call that an amenity.
Oh, yeah, it is, because it reduces power interruptions.
Right, but
This
it's also, it's a design choice, it's meeting, I don't know, I think not everything is as straightforward as like a physical space, I guess.
Right, but
It's
everything that
the-
has a benefit. can
Right.
have
Yeah,
Everything. So I'm not saying go do that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, when I see the word community benefit and we are really just counting, we are really just looking at the physical item and whether because we're really just saying, did they meet their contractual obligation, right? Essentially.
From the time the site plan was approved.
Right.
Until it was completed and signed off, did we get?
Right, exactly.
The value and quality.
I think what I'm saying is,
Mentioned in the condition.
when
So-
somebody comes to the county with a community benefit, you really should engage in a conversation like, is there really a benefit here? No, let's check that out.
I mean, the thing that we saw very quickly is there were so many different tentacles and things.
Right.
We were like, oh, that's its own audit. That's its own audit. So we,
Yeah, so
we've
there's a lot of
filled out
good-
the
they may have some
we would be
additional-
living in Simia's office.
Yeah.
yeah,
So, but not to say that we are, but there were so many things that we learned that we were like, that is really its own audit.
Yeah.
So we had to make sure we stayed
Right.
within the
No,
boundaries. There were a little bit that we were like, okay, we need to see a little bit before this to be able to conclude. We need to see a little bit after where we're, disembarkation point. So, but we made sure we were like, we got to stay here.
Well, as far as nomenclature is concerned, I can't recall who it was or exactly when somebody was talking about shade trees, and the response was, well, gee whiz, a tall building can provide shade too.
All right, now we're going deep. Anything else to add? Stay tuned for January. It's not to be fun.
We'll go into, again, we already talked about DTS, the DTS audits. Thank you, sure, we'll jump right into just kind of some of the infrastructure things. One of the things, outcome, we had talked about, like the coordination with APS, their APS auditor. So we've established what we call our quarterly auditor exchange form. So DMF and AuC, we were already talking about just kind of what's going on, what do we see, what do we have planned. We looped APS into this conversation, so we're now meeting with the APS auditor. So we're speaking with Alice. So she's now kind of been brought into the club of auditors. So we do have that quarterly auditor exchange. That's right, invitation only. So we had our first meeting back in November, and we're going to meet again. I believe our next one is scheduled maybe February or March.
DMF actually has been meeting with her for
Oh, right.
regularly for a long time.
Yes.
That's great.
DMF and Ken, Allison. I guess we got into their club.
I mean, there were two clubs and you kind of merged the two clubs.
Yeah, we even have lunch at times. So we're actually going to do lunch in January.
And maybe more of our work will rub off on that.
Sorry. Okay. Going down into the next bullet. Adding public comment to the agenda for audit committee. So what we're gonna do starting in January is that we want to add a public comment form to the agenda and have that as kind of reoccurring. But before we get to that, we want to make sure that we have some thought around what that should look like. So we are drafting a policy that will help kind of guide what this will look like. Things that we're thinking about, like kind of where do we place this on the agenda? How many, kind of, do we want to limit the number of speakers, which the number of 5 was just kind of grabbed out of the sky. And you might put limits of 2 minutes, because as you can see, we were scheduled to go to 6:30. If we had 5 people with unlimited amount of time, we would be serving breakfast, scrambled eggs and bacon.
This doesn't include putting a time limit on audit committee member questions. Just checking.
Or number of questions.
What we're saying is maybe, you get the first 10 minutes for free, and then, I-95.
Revenue, we're gonna be all about revenue.
Yeah.
Well, you need the money.
There you go. That's a moneymaker. So, but yeah, so we are working on developing a policy, and we will share that at the next meeting. Actually, we will share it before the meeting, so you can take a look at and comment on it. With that public comment section.
Sounds like the next meeting is really loaded.
Yeah.
You've got Clifton Larson.
Yeah, it's
You've got the DMF update, you've got community benefits, the public comment. Setting ourselves up for,
Committee that'll run into the back.
One community benefit will be out, but it may not.
oh, okay,
It's not.
okay,
Yeah. it's-
okay.
But again,
Because
we're,
historically, we've taken up the whole time.
yes.
We're happy if you would like to.
No, what we're, again, we want to make sure that we leave the proper due diligence for review, because
Yep.
there's going to be some things that we got to discuss in that report. So
Yep.
we don't want to rush it. Like,
No.
we got to get hurt.
No,
for the
no,
January meeting.
no.
We're also not gonna drag it out and issue it just before the March meeting, so.
Yeah.
Please, it may be out for a bit.
So I have 20 minutes till the fact meeting. So
Oh, okay.
You have to eat too, right?
Okay, so I think the last thing here is just in your materials was just an update on follow-up audits. So these are all of the follow-up audits that are on our radar. DTS management came on. STAR got added with 21 recommendations that we'll follow up on at some point, but this is just kind of what is on our queue for audit follow-up. Police is underway, emergency ECC will be getting started soon. And hopefully the next time we'll do a report on this will be in June. So hopefully we'll have more of this off of the list. That is our report from OCA. Any questions?
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Too late now, yeah.
John, would you like to ask any questions about the recent presentation of your audit plan, or are you thinking it's just as part of the plan?
My question time has expired.
Yeah. He doesn't have 5
No,
minutes.
$300.
I'm done. I'm done. Good meeting, I thought.
Good, right?
Anything else?
I moved to adjourn.
There we go.
Oh, I do have one item. Have you scoped out the meeting dates for 2026 yet or no?
I can fit them too.
Okay, you haven't sent them then.
No.
Okay, you'll circulate.
It's pretty much,
Okay.
I thought they might be on our calendar.
they're on there.
I think there's a calendar invite already.
Oh, there might be, yeah.
I may have overlooked it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Me too.
January 22nd is when it's.
okay,
Extension of remarks can be submitted. Right.
okay.
Yeah. And we think you're at your term limit, John.
Well, I remember, let me see. Kitty Clark Stevenson served for maybe 20 years on, what committee was it? What's her name?
Human rights.
Carmela Ham served for about 12 or 14 years on Historic Affairs and Landmark Review Board, there's always exceptions to the rule.
Just voted on that rule.
I was gonna say, did you write the rules?
This one for this committee?
Yeah. Different committees or commissions have different charters with different.
That's absolutely true. There's a great lack of uniformity.
Yeah.
Although I do recall seeing something not long ago that says typically, in fact, it was in the PowerPoint, typically 6 years.
I think it's in the charter.
I think there is a motion on the floor, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
there is.
Yes. We are ready to adjourn. Without objection.
So moved.
Be adjourned.
Thanks.
But John, I do think, John,
Good to see you.
John,
You too.
I think that I think it's best specific, it's like 3 2-year terms.
Mhm.
So we should probably roll you off and let someone apprentice in, and
You're always
you're
welcome.
always welcome, and then we can